In the 13th century, in Odisha on the eastern coast of India, was made a grand temple dedicated to Surya, the sun. It was the tallest and most magnificent temple made in India, the climax of 800 years of building structural stone temples. It was built by King Narasimha Mahadeva I of the Ganga dynasty. The land of Odisha had seen prolific temple building since the 7th and 8th centuries. At nearby Bhubaneswar stand numerous temples. These display the development of a distinctive style of architecture and sculpture in Odisha by the end of the first millennium. The great temple at Konarak was made essentially according to the regional style which had been developed, with a dramatic difference. The temple tower or Deol and the hall or Jagmohan were conceived as a giant chariot of the sun. Surya the sun is believed to ride his chariot, driven by Aruna or dawn, across the skies each day. 24 large wheels, 12 on each side, representing the 12 months of the year, were made for the Ratha or chariot. 7 horses were made in front, who pull it forward at a spirited gallop. Perhaps the inspiration was from South India, where Rathas are used to take temple deities in procession on ceremonial occasions. The Deol or tower of the temple originally stood over 200 feet tall, higher than any other temple in India. The hall or Jagmohan still stands over 130 feet tall. The temple is made of 3 types of stone. Chlorite, which endures very well, is used for the most important areas, including the doorways, the icons in the shrines, and the wonderful musicians made high above. Laterite is the unseen core of the platform and the foundation. The main structures are made of condylite, which unfortunately weathers very easily. None of the stones are available in the area, and they must have been brought from long distances by rafts on the river. Since earliest times, the life-giving and vital qualities of nature have been adored at stupa and temple sites in India. The worship of Surya is as ancient as that of any other deity. Temples to the sun god stand at Martand in Kashmir, Modhera in Gujarat, Ranakpur in Rajasthan, and at many other sites. The magnificent temple drew considerable admiration over the centuries. Abul Fazl, the court historian of the Mughal Emperor Akbar, visited the Konarak temple and wrote, "Even those whose judgment is critical and who are difficult to please stand astonished at its sight." Even with its soaring tower lost, the Sun Temple is still a vision of majesty and grandeur. The structures are perfectly proportioned and covered with an endless wealth of sculpture. The architecture and carvings are intrinsically linked in the scheme of an Indian temple. Here we see the complete harmony and blending of both.
And seeing the art alive on the buildings and seeing how much a part of the buildings they were and how bereft the buildings would be without the sculptures gave me truly a different understanding of the meaning of the sculpture and why they were made in the first place. For us in the West, we often see, as I first saw sculpture, that is divorced from its roots, from where it originally came from. However, when one sees it as part of a building, as an integral part, one is reminded of the texts, the Shilpa Shastras, that refer to the sculptures actually as a necessary part of the architectural accoutrements, decor. Without it, it would be like a woman without her jewelry, essentially. And the sculptures, whether they are the iconic figures in the shrines or whether they're the relief figures on the outside, all have a part to play.
The Jagmohan or hall of the temple and the Dyul or tower are built on the same platform. Against the sides of the platform and the staircase in front are made the giant wheels of the great chariot for the sun. These stand over 10 feet high and lend the quality of an epic imagination to the monument. It is the Ratha or chariot which draws Surya in his daily journey across the blue sky. The giant wheels remind us of the grandeur which is in all of creation, the magnificence of divinity which we can awaken within us. The wheels are detailed and realistically made, even with an axle and pin to hold the wheel in place. As with every part of the edifice, they are gorgeously sculpted. Every inch is carved, and miniaturized figures made in great detail inhabit all parts of the wheel. In everything big and small, the artist reflects the expanse of the entire world around him. On the sides of the vast platform is a wealth of reliefs. The Indian artist's love and observation of animals is seen in the many depictions of elephants. They are presented in their sylvan surroundings, uprooting trees, feeding their young, and displaying affection. Other scenes show men trying to capture elephants. They were the prized possessions of the king and nobility. Military processions are another popular theme in the friezes. Men and women are depicted engaged in activities of everyday life. We see a man carrying his goods, as street vendors do till today. There is an old woman taking leave of her family. Perhaps she is leaving on a pilgrimage. We have a scene of a royal person being greeted by a group. These figures are garbed in a foreign type of clothing and bring with them a giraffe, an animal which is not found in India. There are numerous depictions of Alasya Kanyas, or languorous maidens. Since ancient times, all Indian stupas and temples have had such images. They represent the fertility and creative urges of nature, which ensure the continuance of life. Mithuna couples are seen embracing each other. These images of the coming together of man and woman continue since earliest times in Indian art. They are presented along with all else of the natural world and of the divine.
We have the popular impression of a certain sort of erotic element. So, but when one sees the male and the female coming together, there is that sort of often the sense of eroticism. I would say sensual, but sensual in a devotional way, which is very different from sexual. And I think I would associate eroticism with sexuality, and I don't see that in this. They're coming together as one, as more sort of in a sense of community, in a sense of grace, rather than in a sort of a sexual way.
In the Alasya Kanyas, we see the grace of the human form and the underlying longing of all creation to be united in the Lord. This vision is what gives the special quality to the art of India, a vision which sees a unity in all its beings, human, animal, the trees and flowers, in all that there is. The desire of each man and woman for another is seen as no different from the desire of every creature to play his role in the interconnected world. The desire of each to gain the ecstasy of the knowledge of the divinity which is in each of us. Nagas and Naganis are serpent beings who continue from the earliest times in Indian art. Besides fertility, they present the protective forces of nature. The embrace of life and divinity which warmly protects us is best seen in the images of Naga couples. The Jagmohan stands about 130 feet tall. The roof is made in the traditional Orissa style. It is a stepped pyramidical form known as a pidha roof. On the terraces of the different levels of the roof are made some of the finest figures at Konarak. Shiva is made in his wrathful form as Bhairava, guarding the temple from evil forces. On either side are beautiful musicians who herald the passage of the sun across the skies. Scriptures mention that Surya, or the sun, is to be praised with the accompaniment of musical instruments, the cymbal, the drum, and the flute. The musicians appear animated by their music. Their limbs are poised in rhythmic movement. The faces are finely sculpted. They are carved out of chlorite, which is both conducive to fine carving and lasts very well. The main entrance to the Jagmohan is made in the style of temple doorways, which was established by the 5th century. It is made out of chlorite and is fully carved. There are 8 rows of carving, the innermost recessed most deeply. Among the motifs here are Nagas, loving couples who celebrate the harmony of existence, and the continuous vine of the pulsating life force of the world. Unfortunately, the main and tallest structure of the temple, its grand tower, has collapsed. 8 Dikpalas faced and presided over the different directions. Of these, 3 are in the nearby Archaeological Museum, and 1 is in the National Museum in New Delhi. Around the tower of the temple are made the Parsava Devtas, images most closely related to the main deity in the shrine. On the south, a larger-than life-sized Surya stands majestically on his chariot. His charioteer is Aruna, the dawn. Surya is the only Indian deity to be depicted with boots, which are not an indigenous tradition. This would reflect the constant interaction with the lands on the northwest of the subcontinent. The king and his family priest are seen kneeling below the deity. This and other images of Surya are made with a certain formality and dignity. They are among the finest iconographic art of Orissa. In ancient times, the art of stupas and cave temples was sponsored by the people. It was farmers, fishermen, traders, housewives, monks and nuns who paid for the making of the sculptures and gateways. The purpose of art was to take us to eternal themes, away from the noise and clamour of the material world around us. The aim was to lose the ego and the concern for the self. Therefore, ephemeral personalities, including of kings, were not depicted. From the 8th century onwards, we have seen a shift. There is now an emphasis on grandeur and the depiction of regal power and splendour through the making of great temples. We have also seen the emergence of images of the king in sculpture and in painting. The Sun Temple at Konarak represents the high point of monumentality and splendour in the tradition of temple building. It also celebrates the activities and life of the king as never before in temples. The niches of the sanctum and of the Jagmohan were originally filled with many images of the king. He is seen practicing archery with admirers looking on. He is seen at a festival or in a leisurely moment sitting on a swing. The temple celebrates all of life around, with the divinity at the center of it all. It also places the king very close to the focus at the center and celebrates his life and greatness. The guru or teacher of the king is made much larger than the king himself. The importance given to the teacher is in keeping with continuing traditions. The King Narasimha Mahadeva I is seen worshipping the Shivalinga, Vishnu and Mahishasuramarddini. Colossal pairs of animals originally guarded the stairways on all sides of the Jagmohan. The ones on the east are now placed before the entrance to the Bhoga Mandapa. The ferocious lions rear majestically above the elephants crushed below them. They awaken within us the attitude of fearlessness, with which we are to face the demons of ignorance who block our path towards knowledge. Inspired by these fearless creatures who represent the potential within us, we proceed into the temple. Giant elephants and war stallions met the devotee at the other entrances to the Jagmohan. Today they stand on reconstructed platforms at a little distance from where they were originally placed. They are made with lifelike realism. The Bhoga Mandapa is at the entrance to the temple complex. The temple represents the entire cosmos. Here, where we have just come into the sacred grounds, we are surrounded by a world of effusive forms. They represent the joy of life. In Indic belief, the path to realization is one which leads to bliss. Musicians and dancers greet us here in the Bhoga Mandapa. In modern times, the lost form of the classical dance of Odissi was revived largely through the study of the dance movements portrayed here. The temple of Konarak celebrates life and the energy of the sun which pervades it all. There are elephants which are made in the ancient tradition, bearing the entire structure upon their backs. Men and women are seen in daily activities. We see soldiers, hunters, village folk, and noblemen. As divinity is seen in all of creation, all aspects of life receive the attention of the artist. The vital life of nature is seen in young maidens. The interconnectedness of all beings is expressed in combined creatures. Nagas represent the benign protection of nature. In the center of all the movement and numberless forms of the world is the divinity which pervades it all.